Dr. Ashok Khosla, a G8 Special Advisor on Environmental Issues, was also a professor at Harvard, where he taught Al Gore. He later went back to India and started Development Alternatives Group, the mission to promote sustainable national development, which also means creating sustainable livelihoods on a large scale and thus to mobilize widespread action to eradicate poverty and regenerate the environment. I recently had a chance to speak to him. Let's take you there. Dr. Khosla, it is such an honor and pleasure to have you with us on the show today.
I'm delighted to be here.
Welcome. Well, tell us some of the issues that are faced by India as a nation today with respect to alternate energy.
Energy, of course, is an issue in every country. And today, alternate energy is going to be in the form of wind and solar and biomass and so on. India, of course, has a great deal of biomass, agro-wastes, weeds, and a lot of other things. At the moment, it is now just beginning to get into wind. And solar energy is a bit expensive. It's not clear that we can afford to do too much of that. So in the area of alternative energy sources, we have only begun to introduce the ones that really are going to make a difference in the long term.
And which ones are those?
Essentially, at the moment, biomass, which means agricultural wastes and things like that. But in future, I think we will be doing a lot more with wind. There are large parts of India, especially the coastal zones and the mountains in the north, where there is quite a lot of wind. Then, of course, in the long run, it'll be sun, because India has a lot of sun, but it's still expensive.
So what about your company? What areas does that focus on? What particular aspect of energy conservation?
We're not just into energy. Energy is a means to an end. Development alternatives is really about how to make people's lives better through innovation, through designing new technologies and designing new ways of delivering them to the village economy. But we work on low-cost housing, we work on water and sanitation, we make new types of toilets, we make new kinds of livelihoods, jobs that people can make for themselves in villages, but with machines, with an improved productivity. So a very large part of our work is really to do with how to make people's lives better. In that process, energy is often saved.
Now, can you give us some specifics as to something that your company, through innovation and technology, has done for a particular situation in terms of sanitation or building a house?
Well, we are one of the world's top builders of low-cost, low-energy, low-material housing. According to the government of India, we need to build something like 45 million houses just to clear the backlog, the number of families that need a decent house. In order to make that, you are going to have bricks and cement and steel, which is so large in amount that you would more or less destroy the countryside getting all that done. So we're looking at new ways of building these with much less material, much less energy, much less water.
And thereby keeping the cost low?
And thereby keeping the cost low, the impacts on the environment low, and satisfaction high, because people often find the kinds of houses that we build are much more friendly, user-friendly than
now, are you able to do this in cities, or do you have to move to urban?
We have built our own headquarters is in Delhi. It's a 5-story building with a couple of basements, and that is using our own technology. So it is possible to do it in the cities, but it's really designed for single or double-story buildings, which means that the cost of land must be reasonably low. So cities, it's not possible to do that. So most of our work has been for rural village use.
Okay. Now, when you talk about keeping the cost low and thereby because you're using less energy, is there a change in the quality or the kind of houses that you're able to build because of that?
It's different. It's not necessarily worse. But you see, one of the problems is that a large part of consumer preference lies in psychology. So if people get used to the idea that concrete and steel and cement houses are good, and mud houses are not so good, then of course they feel shortchanged.
But if the durability and the look is kind of kept
Exactly.
similar, I'm sure
And if you go to New
it doesn't
Mexico,
make too much of a difference.
it does. In fact, on the contrary, it's sometimes very desirable. And if you go to places like New Mexico and some parts of Texas, you'll see what are called fake adobe houses. People actually make them look like mud so that they are high
It
class.
could be a new fad.
So it is
because anything which is different
correct.
could be
So that's what we are trying
special,
to do, to help start.
Now, as a
fad.
nation, how far do you think India has come along in terms of building technology to support what you're doing?
Well, look, it's a very large part of India is out there in rural areas and is very poor. 2/3, maybe 3/4 of India are people who live with incomes of less than $2 or $3 a day. So we're talking about those. There's, of course, a fairly sizable amount of people in India now who are in the middle class, who live very well. And for them, construction technologies are the same as in US and in Europe, and they can have access to high quality materials and very expensive materials. But where we work in village applications, it's not so easy to change the patterns because the government has certain rules and regulations and standards and codes, and they have to be changed if you're going to.
That must be a long,
It
tedious
is
process.
not so easy. And one of our big jobs has been to try and get them to change the way they legislate construction materials and so on.
A lot of times I would like to conserve energy and do something, but because it has not been a habit, it's harder to
That's right, you don't
develop
think of it.
later.
You
Yeah,
don't
so
think of it. And,
the earlier the better.
right. Ultimately, simplification of our lives and changing our lifestyles is going to be important. I recently was in a little country next door to India called Bhutan, and I spent a week of most amazing week in my life, I think I spent there, because the people there are genuinely, they're Buddhists, but they're genuinely
It's one of my favorite places too.
unbelievable. I mean, these people have rejected the notion of GDP, and having adopted gross national happiness as their indicator of success and prosperity, they've put a lot of meaning into it. I mean, to them, having enough time to meditate and pray is a part of a quality of life. And they measure it, and it's really quite extraordinary. So,
And there's nature, abundance
Of course.
there, and they have their own way of conserving that, and they don't misuse it.
no, and they don't feel deprived. They are fulfilled human beings. I mean, they are getting in their lives as much as any of us are getting.
And that you would
more.
attribute to having a simple life.
And it's what you
Become-
might call simple.
I
and-
would think so, yes.
Yeah. I think we've got a lot of fundamental value changes to make now. The easy things have been done. You know, how do you save a little bit of energy? How do you save a little bit of water? That's not hard anymore. We know what to do. Turn off the taps, turn off the lights. But what you will now really have to do is do things that were
Lifestyle
considered,
change.
were considered inconvenient, but they are actually no more or no less.
Yeah, it's how you train your brain
Yeah,
to
exactly.
get used to some things and not waste it. Any other message for our viewers?
Well, it's today impossible to think of oneself being an American or an Indian we are global citizens. We have to recognize that almost everything is interconnected. Today, climate change is going to impact all of us, and it's being caused by all of us, but in different kinds of ways. And so you can't say, well, I'm okay, I'll get away with it. I live on top of a mountain, so the sea level rise won't affect me. But you can't get away for very long from
Every person counts, like every drop
indeed.
matters.
And you can't get away from the other problems, the financial crises, the species extinction crisis, which is just as bad as the climate change crisis. I mean, we're now today in the fifth grand extinction. I mean, that we're losing species at a rate that's faster than when the dinosaurs disappeared. I mean, we're really in very serious trouble. Our fisheries are collapsing, our corals are bleaching, and I'm not here as a doomsday person. I think we can save the planet and have a wonderful life for all the people on it. But we can only do so if we make people's lives better, and we have much less injustice and inequity throughout the world, so that everyone can live somewhat in harmony
And
with
enjoy
nature.
what they have
Exactly.
instead of destroying it. Ashok, what brought you to the US?
On this occasion, I come to the US quite often. It's like a home. I was here in graduate school and I was teaching in the university. I came, like I always do, to see old friends, but I also had some work to do, which was to raise funds for an organization, an international organization that I'm president of, which is called the International Union for Conservation of Nature, which is the largest organization concerned with species and habitats and biodiversity. So I did that for a week. I went through Boston and New York and Chicago and San Francisco, trying to get rich people to put some money into saving life on Earth. And there was a good response, and I'm hoping to put together a sizable fund which will enable us to do a lot of things.
This fund is going to be raised in India? Or
No, it's raised all over the world, and it's for an international organization which has its headquarters in Geneva. And I happen to be the elected president of that, chairman of the board.
Now, are there many organizations like that, or
There are a few. This is the largest.
and focused on India?
No, this is not. This is focused on around the world.
Okay.
This is a completely global organization, like the World Wildlife Fund. There are 3 or 4 big organizations that are concerned with the globe. And I, having been concerned with these issues, I got elected to head it for 4 years.
That's amazing.
But my rest of my trip, which includes now in the valley, is to raise finance for my social enterprise, Development Alternatives. So I've been talking to people who might want to invest in our business. This is not it's unlike the IUCN one, which is a donation, which is I'm trying to raise grants and donations. I'm looking for capital investments where we would be basically returning the money. I mean, it's an investment.
It's amazing. Where can we get some more information on?
Well, we have some websites, and I can give you a list of them.
Sure.
And you can. People would probably be interested in looking at them, and we can give you all the details.
Well, thank you so much.
Thank you.